Good evening, everyone. Hopefully now you can hear me. It's 8 p.m.-ish on Tuesday, and we had a little bit of a false start there. My name's CJ Reynolds, and this is Teacher Talk Live, a show where we talk about education and issues in education and take your questions and try and answer them in real time so you can show up to school tomorrow and feel like you've had a little bit of support. For those of you that don't know me, or if this is your first time watching the show, again, I'm CJ Reynolds. I teach in West Philadelphia. I teach 9th and 10th grade literature, and I also teach the history of hip hop as an elective in school. So this evening, I have a guest that I've only met once before, but I've watched her plenty of times. This is Yvette. She is from the Beleaf and Fatherhood channel on YouTube. And so, Yvette, could you give everyone a little bit of an intro on who you are, kind of what's your place in the teaching world, that sort of thing?
Okay, I'm Yvette. I've taught for 7 years. I've taught middle school and high school, and I've only really stuck to math. And recently, I just had my third baby on St. Patty's Day this year, and that kind of helped, that along with other things, kind of helped to transition me into becoming a stay-at-home mom. And so with that, I've also decided to homeschool my 4-year-old who is preschool age.
Nice. So let me ask you about that, because I'm really interested in this for a number of reasons that I'll get into. But what made you and your husband what started that conversation of whether you should homeschool or whether you should send your kids to school?
So I wasn't as adamant about it as my husband was, because I am a public school teacher. So I do have a heart for public education. But his convictions were a lot stronger than mine. And through multiple conversations about what we want for our family and for our kids, we kind of lean more this way. There are multiple, there's so many different reasons for why. But one of the main ones that kind of swayed me that way is because I did start to see students in my classroom become highly influenced by their peers. And I also was noticing I was also noticing that I was spending more time with them than I was spending with my own kids. And so the issue of time and influence for me was the biggest reason why. Also noticing that as a public educator, we try our hardest to meet the needs of all students, but I know that that's just sometimes not possible with 30 plus kids in the classroom. And so I like the idea of being able to individualize a program for my kid that is unique to his learning style and his needs, and it can go at his own pace.
Yeah. How have you found it trying to coming up with a curriculum? Are you using something you found online? Are you guys figuring out your own thing, or how's that working out?
So my sister-in-law was using a curriculum called My Father's World, and she shared it with me, and I had really liked it when she first shared it with me. And when we recently decided to go the homeschool route, I started looking up different curriculums here and there, and that one kind of was one that I really liked and enjoyed, and I figured I would like to just start with something and then just kind of tailor it to Theo as time saw fit. But it's basically preschool. It's just alphabet, knowing the sounds of the letters, knowing how to count, knowing colors and shapes. So it's not too involved, but the route we've taken is basically we choose a letter of the week. So this week's letter is S. And I like this curriculum because it doesn't go in order like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It kind of starts all over. It mixes the letters up and starts it that way so that kids don't kind of get stuck with A, B, C. It's like a memorization versus an actual knowing of the letter.
That's really interesting. I never thought of it that way. So in going into this, a lot of the arguments I hear against, so my wife and I have also thought about doing homeschooling as well. And it's not completely off the table even as of now. Our oldest is 10, and we're just feeling like a lot of his needs that need to be met in school are not being met. And that maybe if we were kind of custom tailoring a curriculum, like you said, to him, that some of those learning gaps might close. What about the socialization aspect of it? Like getting to know other kids? Are you a part of something else? Have you met, do you know of groups that meet, that do that stuff? Is it just something you're going to do yourselves? Like, what about that piece of it?
So we know of a few co-ops that some people that we know are a part of. Right now, we're not officially a part of a co-op, but our kids have enough friends and I have enough community of people with children their age that they get plenty of socializations. Like, that's not a concern for me at all. We're always at the parks. We're always setting up play dates. I have a play date tomorrow. They're always socializing with other kids. So I'm not really concerned about that at all.
Okay. What about in terms of, I was going to ask another question along those lines. And some of this stuff is like completely self-serving on my part, because I'm just like, well, what do you think about this? So what about in terms of like, even like you kind of like, how's the change been for you being home all the time instead of like getting up, going to work? Is there an urgency? Like, so some folks I know that homeschool stick to a very strict schedule, and some folks are like, whenever we kind of get to the lesson today is when we get to it. So sometimes that's after dinner, it's in the middle of the afternoon, it's early in the morning. Do you have a schedule that you're planning on sticking to for that? Or is it like a little bit looser than that?
Right now it's pretty loose, but my hope is that it will become more scheduled to where, like, my goal is to do it 3 days a week at 10 o'clock. Okay. And not to be any longer than 11. So it's like supposed to be from 10 to 11, 3 days a week. And then there's supposed to be a library day, and then there's supposed to be a field trip day. And so right now we're kind of loose on that, but that is my goal. I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, I didn't think about the fact that not only am I transitioning from like a public school educator to a homeschool educator, I'm transitioning from an like working mom to a stay-at-home mom. And so that in and of itself, like figuring out that role has been very interesting in and of itself, because that is a whole other animal.
Yeah.
Like, I realized before when I was going to the classroom every day, I could compartmentalize certain like parts of who I am. But now it's kind of like I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm doing homeschool, and my husband's working, but he works from home. So I'm trying to keep all the kids, contained, and school Theo. It's just not, it's not very, I don't know, because Uriah, he only lasts like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then Anaya, if I can get her to go to sleep during that hour, it would be wonderful. But if she's not asleep, then it's like, okay, I got to attend to Anaya, I got to keep Uriah entertained, and I got to keep Theo focused. So it's kind of a lot. So right now it's definitely more fluid and more like when I get to it type of thing, but I'm really trying to hone in on a schedule for Theo.
Yeah. So is Uriah doing this also, or is it just Theo at this point he's doing it?
Uriah is along for the ride, but I'm not like as, I don't know. I just try to have him doing different things like shapes, or like sharing. We read. He sits down and reads with us, or I'll have him counting or doing something. Sometimes I kind of give him an iPad to do an activity on the iPad to kind of keep him entertained that way. But mostly it's focused on Theo, with Uriah kind of just hopefully gaining something. Something gets in there. But yeah.
How much? There's a bunch of questions coming up now that I'm going to answer to in a minute. But what about in terms of, and this doesn't necessarily speak to schooling, but like you guys talk about family a lot on your channel. I'm just interested in, like, you and Glen are home with all 3 kids every day now. How has that transition been, as opposed to like leaving for part of the day and coming home? Because I know in the summer so this summer it was the first time I ever stayed home that I haven't worked for someone else since I was probably 12 years old in the summer. And so having all of us home all summer was like such a different transition, where it was like 1 week was fun, 2 weeks was interesting, and then it was like trying to figure out a new dynamic in our house. And I'm just wondering how that's been going for you all.
It's funny because we were kind of just talking about this, but so I had an Aya in March, and I stopped working like right before, like a couple of weeks before she was born. And so during the March phase, and then like 6 to 8 weeks after she's born, I'm technically on maternity leave.
Yeah.
So there came a point when Glen was like, okay, so you're off now, because he takes really good care of us. So he was kind of like cooking, cleaning, doing dishes, and I was kind of just tending to Anaya and kind of adjusting to that. But there did come a point where he was like, okay, so you're on duty now, check in, like I'm tapping out kind of thing. And it's been interesting. So I don't know, the dynamics of our house is right now I'm downstairs, and then there's an upstairs, and the garage is kind of upstairs.
Okay.
Weird. But he has a setup in the garage. So a lot of times he will go, like that's his workspace. So he goes there and works, and then we're inside doing whatever. And I try to keep the kids here, but we all know he's up there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard. Like if I need something, I'll be like, hey, go ask your dad or tell your dad to come down here. So it's definitely interesting. I think we're trying to like realize that dad has work hours, and that those work hours are not supposed to be interrupted. But at the same time, he's pretty flexible with that because, we are all home.
Yes.
So it's nice to be able to see him and hang out with him. Plus, a huge part of what he does has to do with us anyway. So we're definitely still there, but we try to give each other our space. I think he wants to be a part of the homeschooling process. Yesterday, I had to tap him in because we had a rough little session with Theo, but
that's right. I don't know if I was that. My wife is always sitting next to me, so she's the not so secret wife I refer to her as. There's the hint. So, and she's laughing because we were talking about this yesterday. I don't know if it was on Instagram or YouTube that I saw. It was text message. So Theo's 4 now, right? Is this something you're planning on? And I don't know if you guys have thought this far ahead or what, but like, is this like for good you're thinking of homeschooling, or is there like a point at which you think like you'll switch over to public school or private school or something like that? What are your thoughts on that?
So next year I plan to do like I forget what it's called, like the technical term for it, but it's basically where he'll be home 3 days a week and then in class 2 days a week with a teacher. Yes. So I kind of like the idea of a hybrid model where he does get to have that interaction with a teacher and students. But this year it's preschool, so they don't really offer that option for preschoolers. But as we go year by year, I kind of just want to take it year by year. I want to kind of fill him out, fill myself out, fill us out, because it is a whole different experience teaching a preschooler. Like I've always taught, the lowest grade I've ever taught is 6th grade. So 6th graders at least have some kind of background knowledge, whereas Theo has no background knowledge. So teaching someone with like no background knowledge versus teaching kids with background knowledge, it takes a whole different level of patience. Yeah. And like, so we'll take it year by year. Right now, it's like day by day. But I think we definitely want to stay attuned to his needs and what he wants. And so I think after each year, Glen and I will kind of have a conversation in these early years. But I think as Theo gets older and Uriah gets older and Anaya gets older, we'll have conversations with them about what do they feel is best for them.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point too, this idea of like the background knowledge. I mean, and even you guys being able to like, to give that. I have so many kids. So I teach 9th grade primarily. This is the first time I've ever taught 10th grade this year. And so our idea is that we're taking these 9th graders, and then when they go into 10th grade, we're keeping kids that we feel like still are struggling enough. So my co-teacher and we have them again. And so the idea there is that they don't have that lull in the beginning of the year, that a new teacher doesn't get to know them or have to get to know like what their strengths are and their weaknesses and their, quirks as a human being or something like that. And we can just hit the ground running. And it's been really, really great these first few weeks. Like it's been everything that we've wanted, but our students so often miss a lot of that background knowledge because they didn't grow up as readers, or they didn't grow up, like a lot of my guys have never left Philadelphia. We took kids, and this is, I mean, I think this is funny, but we took kids to Costa Rica last year, and it was like, there were so many experiences, and not like the whole world. Like, I never went to Costa Rica. I never left the United States before I like became an adult. But so many of our students just had never seen or done so many of these little things. I think now they came back and they have all these experiences that to kind of like fill in these gaps that they were missing before. And it's so important. And I just think, like, as a parent staying home with your kid, that opportunity has got to be so much stronger, because if you're reading a certain story about something, about the Natural Science Museum, then you can go to the Natural Science Museum. Like, you can create those real world experiences along with what you're learning. And that's just got to put your kid on a different playing field, I'd imagine. Antonio Fernandez is asking, though, what are the limitations and how do you overcome them? Where do you go for help? So even though you're just kind of starting out on this, are you thinking in terms of long-term, like what might limitations be, or like how you can handle those?
Well, I'm finding the more I talk to people that do homeschool, I am able to find more resources for homeschoolers. Like, the biggest limitation I think would be like money, like paying for a curriculum or resources in order to do different manipulatives or whatever. Right now, I've been able to borrow some stuff from people, and some stuff we've had to buy ourselves, but that's the biggest limitation. But I don't foresee too many limitations. Like you said, like being able to talk about photosynthesis and then go right outside and look at what's happening. I don't know, that's pretty cool to me. So there's a lot of flexibility in that area. But right now I don't see any. And I think when he turns 5, I have access to a lot of those resources, the financial resources anyway.
What have you learned? And I don't know if you've kind of looked into this, or if you have friends. So do you have friends that homeschool as well? That you do? What do you do in terms of, like, if a student has like a learning disability, if a child, I guess same thing in this case, but I'm just used to referring to everyone as a student. What if someone has like a learning disability or something that you don't feel like prepared to handle? Like, if it was like dyslexia or something like that. Like, I'm not that familiar with that world as to like, what would you do like in that situation?
Well, the cool thing is I've been teaching for 7 years, so I have a lot of friends who are educators and who have experience with these types of things. I've already thought about reaching out to some of my like early childhood teachers, because I don't really know, like, is it strange that my son doesn't know that S, like the difference between scissors starting with the S and paper starting with the P? Like the sound of it, So I've already thought about reaching out to them and saying, like, well, how do you address this learning gap or whatever in order to help a kid understand better? Yeah. I've also been looking at, there's so many blogs about homeschooling preschoolers. And Pinterest is my best friend. So there's just so many things online. There are some YouTube videos. I have educator friends. I have homeschooling friends. I've already, I reached out because Theo's a left-handed kid. I'm right-handed, so I don't even know how to hold a pencil. So I reached out about that, and then the next day I got a friend gave me like a grip thingy to put on the pencil to help the kid know how to hold it, So I don't know. I feel like there's just, I don't know. I feel like it's just more opportunity to reach out to my educator friends and keep in touch, as well as look to see what's out there online. I just paid $9 for this really cool resource about hands-on activities that deal with different sensories that the kids have. So that was pretty cool. It looks like it's going to have a lot of resources. It's like 160 pages.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I never thought about being right-handed and teaching a left-handed. I'm left-handed. Your son might be destined to have sloppy handwriting anyway. So that's kind of, I somehow escaped that. I had a mom that went to Catholic school her whole life. And so just tracing her letters, I think, gave me nice handwriting. But most of the rest of my people, they all have like super sloppy handwriting, and it's always smeared because you're dragging your hand over it as you're writing. But Tara Armstead is asking, have you seen anything so far in homeschooling that you see it could be generalized in the public school setting? You want to hit that?
Have you seen anything so far? It's only been like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I can't say, and hi Tara, I can't say that I have yet. I can't say that I have.
That's so, when I think of like how attractive homeschooling is, it's like, I think the excitement for me is I can teach my children like what they want, instead of like, so many educators that contact me through YouTube because of my channel talk about how they're like really locked down to these curriculums in school and how they have to do whatever the mandate is. And there's only so much flexibility. Like most help that we've ever gotten from teachers has been because the teacher has kind of like looked both ways and then said, okay, here's what I'm willing to do for your child, and not because the curriculum let them do it. And then, a lot of these curriculums that I'm hearing about, like they just are full speed ahead. What happens today, you have today to learn. And then tomorrow we're going to move on to the next thing. And if you didn't get it, guess what? You get left behind. And, the older my kids get, the more I'm seeing how I can get a 9th grader who's on a 2nd grade reading level, or I teach all boys, but how most of my boys hate reading. Like they just, and I used to think that kids were just kind of like fronting because they didn't want to seem like they were a nerd or something like that. But no, I believe it. Like they hate reading. And so at 9th grade, it's a hard fix. And I have a couple things that I do. And I think my general excitement about it helps them. But when kids are so young, to see them like becoming disengaged in learning when, you want it to be something that they're super interested in, that's really, really exciting. And so homeschooling definitely has that piece. But I think for us, it's like all of the little things that school can provide, like a reading specialist or a speech specialist, or, someone, I don't know. Yeah, like whether you get like occupational therapy or something like that. And, if you go to a specialist to get that, it's a fortune to pay for that out of your own pocket, unless you like really know someone, like you're saying, and in the teaching world, you generally do like get to know some folks. But if you're not in the teaching world, that can be a really difficult thing to kind of like figure out for your kid. And you don't want to do it too late, at least when they're in school, you can blame the school, but then there's no one else to blame but yourself if it gets messed up. So,
that's the whole thing of itself. I feel like you as a parent, and I feel like parents in general can realize this, but I feel like if you're educating your child, it probably will be recognized sooner than it would be if they were in a public school setting, possibly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Right. Tara's also asking, are there special area requirements with homeschool? For example, are there art and music lesson requirements too?
Yes, in the older grades there are, but not in preschool. Preschool, I guess, is kind of just for fun. But I know that in the older grades there are grants for like piano lessons or karate. Somebody's trying to face me. Sorry. Mother-in-law.
She's not watching you on the show. I mean, come on.
But yeah, there are special grants that you get in order to do things like that in the older grades, but not in preschool. There is really no funding for preschool.
Okay, so is preschool mandatory in terms of homeschooling, or is it? It doesn't start. Okay. Yeah. And how do you know how going, and this is just my own ignorance, but I think I'm interested in it, maybe someone else is interested in it. How do they like track what you are doing at home, right? Like, I feel like you could be doing nothing and just fill out some paper that says like you do it. But I don't know how that kind of tracking takes place. Do you have any idea?
I think that it's too soon for me to be able to answer that question, but I do know that, like I was saying, if I were to go like through the program that I want to go through next year, where Theo's in school 2 days a week and then with me 3 days a week, they do have like I think they call them coaches. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
Where they kind of check in to see like what's been going on, or they like have benchmark type assessments to be able to check in to see what the students know and understand. I don't really know that much yet. Theo turns 5 in February, and I plan to go to an orientation then. But we're just kind of jumping in feet first, or head first.
What's Theo's reaction been to like school so far? Does he know that you're homeschooling? Does he think you're just doing like this kind of timing during the day, or what?
He knows that it's homeschool. He knows that he's supposed to be learning, and he knows it's a designated time in the day. He was super excited. He's still super excited, but Theo's the type of kid. He's that kid that annoys everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that person that knows how.
Ninth grade. I know what you're talking about. So go ahead.
No, let me explain myself though. The person that like just naturally gets it. He's just naturally talented, and he gets everything the first time.
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't take him too many tries. And so yesterday we were doing an activity where he didn't get it right away. So he experienced frustration, and then it kind of turned into like, you know, like that attitude where I'm not going to do anything. So that was what made yesterday kind of rough, is that we were doing something different. He didn't get it his first or second time around, and so he kind of felt defeated. Which for me was kind of like, okay, like I'm trying to encourage him, but he's kind of giving me an attitude and checking out, and I'm like, dude, you're not 13, you're only 4. Let's act like it. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I feel like he's still excited about it, but he wants to do what he wants to do. And so with me, I'm just trying to, like, after yesterday's lesson, I was on Pinterest. That's when I spent $9 on that one curriculum that I was telling you about. I was like, dude, I really need to find ways to keep him engaged and encouraged, because I don't want him to think that this is not fun and check out every time it's time for school, you know? So I feel like this is also giving me an opportunity to learn him differently. Like,
in what way? Can you talk about that for a second?
And just the way that he learns and engages, like what engages him actually, what excites him, what motivates him. I'm realizing, like, yesterday was my first time realizing that he's naturally gifted in everything. Like, he did gymnastics, and the teacher was like, "Oh, is he only 4? He needs to go up to the next level." He did, and he excelled at that. You know what I mean? He naturally is good at stuff, and so I'm realizing that, I don't know, he needs opportunities to, I don't want to say fail, but that's the only word that's coming to my mind, is he needs opportunities to fall short of the mark in order to have to deal with that, like, perseverance. So I don't know. I'm just figuring out what motivates him and how he views himself and all that good stuff.
That's so. I think, you know, given like you're 3 weeks in, right? I realize like your knowledge on this is limited, but I'm going to keep asking these questions anyway. How do you feel about the balance between mom and teacher would be? Like, I feel like when I walk into school, there's like I walk out of the house and I'm dad, and sometimes that comes home with me, right? Like especially if I have a rough day, if someone wasn't listening and my kids exhibit like a similar behavior to what someone did at school, I'm like more likely to get aggravated quickly. I have to kind of like walk out of the room, calm myself down. And, you know, but at school I can turn on and turn off the teacher in me. How like, if that hasn't happened at home already, like, have you thought about like what that might look like? Is there going to be clear cut? Is it messy?
Well, see, I didn't think about that. I was like, dude, in my classroom, there was just a certain level of respect. Like, I feel like I've always had a good rapport with my kids, but because I'm the teacher and they're the student, there was always a certain level of like, okay, I don't want to say reverence, but that's the word that comes to mind. Whereas Theo still sees me as mom. So he doesn't give me the same respect that's kind of like given to me as an educator in the classroom that I get from other students that aren't my children. And so it is something that I'm having to work for, is like realizing, dude, I know you want to go watch Ninjago, but right now we're trying to focus on this activity. You know what I mean? So and we're home. So I tried, like, I'm not going to show you over there, but I was like, okay, we need to designate a space that's school time. And so we have a hall closet downstairs that I took the doors. I had Glen remove the doors. I painted it and I put a desk and some chairs in it, and now it's our classroom. And so I'm trying to like make it a space where it's like, okay, when the bell rings, we're moving over here, and that means we're learning and we're focusing. So I don't know. That's gonna be probably an everyday struggle. Hopefully not. Hopefully he gets it, but yeah,
I think it probably just takes time. I love that idea of like creating the space, though. I think, friends of mine that have that don't just put the treadmill in the bedroom, like, because then it just becomes a clothes hanger. But like if you create a space and that's your exercise space, or if you friends of ours that have like created like a prayer space where they'll take like a walk-in closet and they make it so like this is all that happens in here. And having that space, it eliminates all the distractions around you also, right? So there's not 97 other things for Theo to look at, or for you to see like the laundry that needs to be folded or the dishes that need to be done. Like you have that kind of like sacred set apart space for that, which I think is a really great idea. I feel like that's got to be a million Pinterest things out there for that sort of idea. Like, I feel like my wife would get extremely excited. I mean, I would too. My classroom is like one of my favorite places in the world. But even that, like, even in like creating a classroom at school, you want to create this space that like the kids are going to feel welcome and feel excited about being there. And, it's as opposed to my friend at school, I covered his class today and there's not a thing on the wall. It looks like an insane asylum from like the early 1900s. It is there's one poster that's kind of crooked and I'm like, man, it's kind of depressing.
See, stuff like that would bother me. I was like, I know I'm going to have a student that's going to notice that it's off a little bit. I did the same thing. My classroom was always like a safe haven, or like I felt like it was more homely. Like I tried to make it feel like a home versus this whole environment.
Yeah. Do you miss that at all yet? So that when the school year started, did you miss going back or like setting up your room or the kids coming back or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said no. I do miss it.
Yeah. What's like one of the biggest things that you kind of like the beginning of the year happened and like what kind of went through your mind in terms of that?
I don't know. I just miss students. Like I loved being with the kids, engaging with them. It wasn't just about the math to me. It was more so about the relationships that I got to build and the growth that I got to see in the kids. And so it was kind of sweet because I still get, I don't know if you've heard of that app called Remind.
Oh yeah.
I used to use it to text students the homework every night. And so students still are sending me like updates about what's going on because I taught 8th graders. So now they're in high school.
Yeah.
And so I'm still getting text messages, and I have a teacher Instagram account, so I still get direct messages, and I get to see what's going on in their lives.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like, I don't know. I just miss the relationships mostly. I also, like, I'll be out and about, and I'll be like, oh, man, this would be a good lesson. I think the beginning of the school year started, and Glen was like, dude, do you really miss it that much? Because we went on a road trip. We drove from here to another city, and then back here. And I was like, oh, this would be a good warm-up problem to see, like, we drove this many miles. Like, what's the perimeter of the triangle? I don't know. But I'm always thinking, like, this would be a good warm-up problem for,
Yeah.
I just can't get out of that mindset of, like, how to apply what's going on in the classroom. But I can still do with Theo, just on a smaller or a a smaller scale.
How has that been in terms of like, so I do well with my, like, I'm very happy that I teach ninth grade. Like that's my spot. I don't want to move. I don't want to change grades. I only like went up to 10th grade this year to help those students that I really, really cared about. And I thought needed it. But like the idea of teaching like kindergarten or preschool or first grade, it feels like a whole nother job. How's that transition been in terms of like, you're used to a certain kind of kid or being able to talk to students a certain way and the conversations you would have as opposed to like with your 4-year-old?
Yeah. I don't know on social media, but I think my son is waking up right now, so you might, I can be kind of like sarcastic and snappy and whatever, but with, like my 4-year-old, I have to kind of be more encouraging and whatever. I was encouraging as an educator, but the kids, you know how kids are. We're all sarcastic.
Yeah.
Well, I can't really be that way with he needs like encouragement. He needs a high five after every little thing.
Yeah.
He needs a good job, buddy, or a round of applause or whatever. So it's definitely different. And just the curriculum in and of itself, it's like I taught math. So like for me, it's natural to like say if we're messing with the counting bears and I'm having like 10 counting bears, I'm like, oh, well, these 2 counting bears went to go get coffee. Like, how many counting bears are left? And I'm thinking about how to like start doing subtraction. But at the same time, like, is this too soon to do subtraction? Or like, it's easy for me to do it that way. But when it comes to like phonics and alphabet, I'm really having to search for ways to teach it and make it interesting because that's not my expertise. Like, give me math and I'll do really good with it. But anything else, I'm like, But it's I'm actually enjoying the challenge. I'm definitely motivated to make it fun and interesting. I kind of want to get away from worksheets and doing more hands-on, like, applicable things for him to learn. Sorry, can you guys hear him?
Yeah, it's fine. Look, the fact that my house is this quiet right now is like unheard of. Like even the dog's not bothering me. It's like, so whatever. Like it's usually part of the game during this broadcast, but
yeah. So I don't know. It's like I said earlier, like the background knowledge that he doesn't have is definitely something that's also interesting. Like he's like a blank slate. And I'm also feeling a huge level of responsibility because, as a higher up grade level teacher, you can be like, well, that teacher failed you. Like they should have been doing more to meet your needs. But now it's like, dude, you're the teacher that they're going to be talking about in the higher grades.
Yeah.
So
your mom did a terrible job. What was she doing at home? Yeah, I hear you. I
don't know about you, but I've gotten students who've been homeschooled. And so my whole, like, I feel like there's a variety of types that you get, but there are the type where it's like, man, you are missing a lot. And then there's like, dude, you're like a genius. You should be in college. You know what I mean? So I want my kid to be the kid that if he does go to public school, they're like, oh, you're so smart.
Yeah. That stuff is, that's one of the kind of tough parts about teaching in a public school. So I'm in a charter school, but like that, it's same thing. Like there's no testing to get into it. You just apply and we pick names out of a hat and you get into the school unless you had a brother or a cousin that went there also. And so this year alone, I have like a student that went to like a small Christian school that had like 10 kids in his class ever since he was in kindergarten. And now he's in West Philadelphia with like the neighborhood. And so that's been a big shift for him. And I feel like I'm kind of keeping an eye on him, and he eats, I I don't know, maybe 20, 25 students that eat lunch with me 2 different times a day. And so I like try to like corral those kinds of kids where it's like, I don't know if you want to eat in the lunchroom. It's kind of madness down there. But like in here, everyone gets along. It might be a better way for you to kind of like get to know everyone. And then I have kids that are like come first generation from, I have someone from Malawi, yeah. Or I had a kid last year from Ghana that came in first generation. And you're right, it's like you just can't always figure out where someone is, or like how much do you know, or how much is my accent throwing you off, even though I don't have an accent because I'm from New Jersey and we don't have accents. But you know, that figuring out all that stuff where kids are is really, really tough. And I'm just going to go somewhere else with that. I don't remember now. My wife is writing down. She's wondering, are you going to do? Oh, now I know what I was going to ask before I get into that. You made a really good point about like math is like your jam, and you can teach that all day, but figuring out all these other things is tough. And like I know with our son, and I don't think my daughter would. I think my daughter would do better in public school, and my son would perhaps do better at homeschooling. But like sometimes the homework even comes home now where I'm like, I don't remember how to do that. Like I haven't done this since I was 10. Like I was terrible at math. Reading's always been my thing. I made sure I got rid of all the math classes my first year in college so that I never had to do them again. And now stuff comes home and I'm like, you forget not only how to do it, but I might remember how I did it, but it's completely new now. And you're like, I can't figure out what your teacher was going with here because it doesn't come home with directions. So sometimes like figuring out like the best way to teach something, or if it's like not interesting to me, that's another thing that I'm like, this is, you know, or like, yeah. So that's a couple of other things I'm thinking, even in terms of like word problems, make me nuts sometimes, like the way that the wording is. And if your kid has, and not saying Theo does this, but just in general, if your child has like a processing disorder, or they can't, that combination of words doesn't work for them, like how are they kind of working that out? And I just think, I think homeschooling could be really good for that. I think it's also, I don't know, is the challenge better when you're in a public school and like you have to kind of figure out how to work that game or something like that. So that wasn't really a question or an answer completely, but that's what I was thinking of as you were speaking. Tara's also asking, do you see any strengths, subject specific, in the last 3 weeks of homeschooling with Theo?
I would just say counting. He's really like, counting is something that he's really into right now, and I don't know if that's my own doing or not, but he's into that. He does really well with shapes. I'm pretty impressed with the amount of shapes that he knows, and he's really good with his colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, so growing up, were you homeschooled, or did you do public school, or what?
Well,
public school. What kind of student were you growing up?
I was straight A student. Like, I was very studious. I still am studious. Like, I used to stand in the classroom on days when the students were just not jamming with me, and I'd be like, dude, I would do anything to trade spaces with you. Like, I enjoy learning. Like, I consider myself to be a lifelong learner, and that's something that I really want to instill in my children.
I'm not sure.
I was like, I'm talking, but you look like I am not saying it.
Yeah, it's live. To be honest, it's like you're in California right now. Like, this is not lost on me, the fact that like you're thousands of miles away and it would take me 5 days to drive to your house or something. Yeah. So like I have a little bit of grace for this. I'll end it on this. What kind of reading program are you thinking about? Like, have you thought about that, phonics or whole reading? What are your thoughts on that so far, if you have any?
Actually, that was one of the things that I'm really like not versed in. Yesterday, I was reading about something. A friend of mine who's a homeschool mom as well, she was telling me about this book. It's called like I don't know if this is the title, but it's 100 steps to teaching your kid how to read or something like that, or 100 steps to learning phonics. And I went and looked it up and was just kind of reading about it. And the way that they teach the alphabet is they don't teach the name of the letter. Like they don't teach A, B, C, D. They teach A, B, A, B,
Yeah.
D. So that when students see words, instead of saying BAT, they say but at, and then it kind of teaches them how to read better. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's genius. I was like, Anaya's gonna learn it this way because I've already screwed up my first two kids. You know what I mean? But I was like, that's such a great idea. Like, don't teach the name of the letter. Like, that's important, but it doesn't really help them with reading. Like BAT, they're gonna see BAT and they're gonna say BAT versus but at. You know what I mean? So I don't really have a clearly identified plan. I've looked up so many different things so far, but I don't know. We're trying to figure it out. My goal, you know those Bob books? I don't know if you know those Bob books.
Yeah, we have a whole ton of those books, yeah.
My goal is for Theo to be able to read those by summer next year. So we'll see. We'll see. He definitely has an interest in books, so that's a plus.
Do you read? Like what's reading look like at your house, even before this started?
They usually will have prayers and a bedtime story right before bed. And then we don't necessarily read throughout the day every day, but there are occasions when we have reading time during the day or something. But they always get a prayer and bedtime story at nighttime. Yeah,
it's I mean, even as someone who loves to read, like reading with my kids, especially in the summer, it's hard to like carve out that time. Like I have to make an actual schedule of like, all right, after lunch, grab a book, we're going to read for 20 minutes. And my son has like an online program that reads along with him. And my daughter has her thing that she does. I find that I really like just reading with my children. And I think that works in school too. So like whenever we're just reading independently, I make sure that I'm reading, I'll sit with my students and just read with them instead of me trying to like grade stuff or get work done. It's time that I'm kind of modeling that for them too. And it's been really, really beneficial because then, and I find that their behavior is much better in high school when I do that. So that's it. That was a lot of hiccups. I really appreciate you like kind of going with that. It was like a weird start. It's never happened before. So people can find you at Beleaf and Fatherhood on YouTube, and what about on Instagram? What's your handle on there? I forget off the top of my head. All right.
Mrs. Melanin, MRS, MELANIN.
Awesome. Yvette, thanks so much for being on here. I'm glad that I got to talk to you. The last time we met in New York, it was like very short. My kids were melting down, and then they fell asleep at dinner that night while we were eating in Brooklyn and didn't eat their dinner. So it was that kind of evening where like they ordered food, and then by the time I got to the table, they were passed out, and I was like, "Are you serious? Like, all right, I guess this is going in a bag and going home with us." So awesome. Thanks so much for being on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, you have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
How do I? Word. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for participating in that. If you are checking this out on SoundCloud or on iTunes, you can go ahead and email me any questions that you have. If you're checking this out on YouTube, leave your questions below. And if you have anything towards Yvette, I'll make sure that I try and like contact those or direct those towards her so she can answer them herself. Can you make that little cute thing pop up there?
No, because we restarted.
No? Oh, all right. So this coming Tuesday, next Tuesday, we have Bond with James from YouTube, who I'm very interested to have on because he is one of the only other teacher YouTubers that's in high school here in the U.S. anyway. I do have my friend Kafupa Land down there in Australia, but there's not a lot of high school teachers. And so I think that that's going to be a really interesting conversation with regards to that. So thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate you checking this out. I'm going to try and end this broadcast if I know how to do it because this is all new. Thanks, y'all. Peace.